Okay, so we're live. I want to welcome our guest today, Florida's 11th Democratic nominee, James Pericola. Uh, would you mind introducing yourself? Um, what's your background is? Why you're running for the seat? Are you what what made you want to run for office? Like, is I always ask this of candidates, like, why do you want to do this?
Uh,
Why do you want to step into this arena? Uh, but yeah, let's start off with that.
I'd like to start off with thanking you because we didn't even have a chance to meet until today, and I've been trying to get in touch with you because you came out for us, which I appreciate. I think our message is getting through, especially to important folks like you. But listen, man, I'm a working class, working poor kid from Central Florida. I grew up here, um, but I've also worked in D.C. for a number of years, and I've just never seen it as bad as what we're seeing now with the corruption, just ineptitude, and people that are leading this country down the wrong path. I started because it was deeply personal for me. My mom is, I love my mom, and she is the best. She's 77 years old, and she is being mistreated in a broken healthcare system. And it's just so frustrating. I actually moved back to Florida in February of this year because it's just her care. She needed more time. So, like most American families, we're juggling, we're doing all we can to help. But it's just so maddening to see that somebody who's done everything right her entire life is being mistreated by a system that the Republicans are breaking on purpose. So, certainly that's my why, or at least my initial why. But to answer your question, there's certainly easier jobs in the world to run for office, especially in a Republican district in Central Florida. But I just think the stakes are so high. I just could not sit on the sidelines, and I'm pleased now to be the nominee.
Yeah, I think that this was. Can you tell us more about like what this district is like in terms of like the partisan lean, like what this part of Florida, like what the district covers in terms of the
Sure.
area? So I think that obviously like I know a little bit about it, but like obviously my listeners do not know about all these different congressional districts. Um yeah, so
Listen, I know better. I know you're a numbers guy, and you know probably more than I do. And I'll have to learn from you on this. But no, it's a huge district, and it's a really diverse district. It goes from the Villages, which is the one of the biggest Republican strongholds in the country, and they love to wave their signs there. Down to Disney and over into West Orange County. As
wow,
they
okay.
continue to manipulate all of these maps to suit them. I wasn't going to play that game, and let's fight them where they stand. They've put up now another billionaire clown who has screwed his workers by, according to the lawsuits anyway, put in faulty wiring and made people less safe. So it's the choice couldn't be more clear. You could have somebody that is in it for the right reasons, that's fighting for working families, versus a guy who's there only to enrich himself. But go ahead. I know you've got questions on the district and how we win. And
Yes, for sure. I think so. So your opponent is the one you just mentioned is name is Joe Strata. He just also won a competitive primary. Um, was he the Trump back candidate, or was he just one of the many other crazy people that just run these primaries? Because I feel like, unfortunately, based on how we've seen races across the country, like a lot of the GOP has become like pro-Trump to the point where like it's just a question of do they get the endorsement or not? Depends on so many other factors. But like, was he the Trump back candidate or was that someone else?
well, as you've seen with Trump now, he oftentimes will stay out until it's too obvious to not stay out. But he did stay out officially in this race. But if you look at all the disclosures, I mean, he hired all the Trump people, all the teams,
Okay.
millions in consultants, and to run an absentee race. He did show up for anything. I'm going to needle this guy every single day. I know some of the Republicans, Tim and others, we showed up to every one of these forums, take the hard questions, talk to people, look at voters in the eye. And this guy wanted to just run an air campaign from, his billionaire lifestyle that he's leading.
Yeah,
I
I
just
think that
see how that helps voters.
yeah,
And
I think that we obviously saw like the thing, and I think that Florida there was a lot because I work on the Jolly campaign, and it's like I follow a lot of Florida politics, and it's like we've seen this happen in both sides of primaries on different races, like where people just don't show up. Like we saw this with, obviously this happened with the Vindman campaign,
Mhm.
um, and obviously it happened with Strata's campaign on the GOP side and various other campaigns. Byron Donalds kind of phoned it in for most of the time, just assuming the Trump endorsement would be enough, and it was, but I think it earned him a lot of distrust among GOP voters, and um, that could lead to his downfall in a general election, where those people might not come up to show up for him, or might vote for the other guy, David Jolly. So I think that it's a real miscalculation. I think to just like assume that you have something locked down or enough money in the district in case of Joe Strata's case that they'll just buy you the election. And you don't have to actually like earn people's votes through the normal, like, answering questions
Of course.
strategy.
Yeah.
Um, so
Showing
what
up.
what
Showing up is the biggest thing. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say, yeah, showing up is very important, but what are the main issues of, like, this congressional district that might be different from, like, the, country as a whole?
I mean, I think for everybody, it's groceries, it's gas, it's insurance, it's healthcare. But what might be a bit different, and we've been hammering, is Social Security and Medicare. We were promised a million times by the Republicans they would never touch Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid, and we saw them cut $1 trillion from our most vulnerable citizens, and it's outrageous and it's wrong. People with special needs, people like my mom who need elder care, rural hospitals. Oh, they weren't going to touch it, but and they call it other things. They make a point of saying, "Oh, we never cut." It's waste, fraud, and abuse, and it's making things more complicated by design, so people fall off the system.
Yeah, I think there and that's how I would say, like, there's a lot of elements of the GOP that have shifted, I would say, over time to be obviously more towards the MAGA point of view, and a lot of the old GOP ways of doing things have gone by the wayside. But I would say one thing that has kind of stuck is their utter disregard for working people. I think that's still very much alive, unfortunately. Like Social Security, Medicare tax is not a new thing among the GOP. Um, Also, this is something that George W. Bush did, and then was walloped in the 2006 midterms. So we'll see. I there's a lot. I've heard a lot of comparisons to that midterm year and this midterm year. And it's been about 20 years, so I think it's time for a reprisal of that type of midterm. But I think that I was wondering also. So you said that like obviously you went to Washington. What exactly did you do in Washington that you think prepared you for a race like this?
I got my start, and I certainly won't overstate. I was a young junior staffer working for Senator Bob Graham, but I mean that guy's a legend for a reason.
Yes.
And what I learned from him firsthand was you listen, you show up, absolutely show up. Everybody matters, and you do the work. It's not about fanfare. It's not about celebrity. It's not about clicks. It's not about your own personal brand. It is grinding it out and doing the work on behalf of your constituents. And we've seen the exact opposite on both sides of the spectrum. And I think the Democrats need a kick in the ass too, just the same. They've lost their way for sure, and I intend to point that out to a lot of the voters we're going to need in this district. And you've seen, based on the primary, I'll just add that there are a lot of unhappy people, with how the Republican race went. We were in the race 8 weeks. We won by 20 points across three separate counties. Each one is a very, very different, diverse constituency, and he barely eked out a win. I mean, we were up 20 with a hard fought battle, and I really respect Royal Webster in particular, who was immediately on the phone to say, "Hey, let's flip this. Let's work together." It's hard. It's really hard work. Um, but there's a lot of discontent on their side the way he won. Senator Baker is a I don't agree with a thing politically with him, but he was there at every event. He worked really, really hard, and for lies to be told about him, which we know are coming our way, a lot of his voters that have known him for 20 years, 20 plus years or longer, are extremely unhappy. And the same with Tim Wilkins voters. They may sit out or they may look at other options.
When you say that lies are told, and then what exactly was told about his GOP opponent at the time, and then obviously what attacks do you expect will be launched towards you now that this is a two-way battle for the general election?
Uh, I mean, all the standard playbook stuff, it's so tired by now. But in their case, pointing the finger that he didn't live in the district when he's been in that community for a lot longer than Joe Strada has, but had been cut out by the Republican gerrymandering. Okay, so technically on the truth meter, that's true, but it's especially rich when he doesn't live in the district either.
Well,
It's
that I the thing is, I will like, I think that this is an issue that certainly has a lot of, like, typically, the whole idea of, like, parachuting into a district is not normally looked well upon, but I will say that, like, if you were living in the district and then something out of your own volition that you didn't choose,
right.
districting moved you out of the district, I don't think that's the same as, like, saying, like, coming out of the district completely and being like, "I'm just gonna run this district," choosing to run the district based on having no connection at all ever. And I think that's a much different, situation, and I think that attacking them is the same is very disingenuous, but not surprised by the GOP doing GOP things, especially when it comes to MAGA. Um, I sincerely hope that those people that supported, those 2 candidates, that oppose Strata come over to your side. Um, have those 2 GOP opponents, uh, actively turned out and endorsed Strata, or have they withheld that?
No, no, quite the opposite. And I mean, I called both of them as I called all the opponents in the race to just congratulate them on a hard fought battle. And you get to know people. Again, I don't agree with a damn thing they say, but on a human level, you see people enough, and you see that they're out trying to earn it. They earn my respect. And I mean, that's certainly something we'll communicate to those disaffected voters. But also to really with the message that we've been running. We don't have to get into all these cultural battles and things that are people. Just make it simple. Make it so people can vote for something. It's not just about running against Trump. How are you going to help me? I grew up with people in this area that voted for Trump 3 times, and some of them were the first people to give me checks that I knew were bigger than they should have. And it's difficult, man. I'll tell you, running for office is brutal, and raising money is my least favorite part. But when you have buddies of mine that work out in the heat all day, are giving me checks to say, "Hey, man, I've known you my whole life. I know you will fight, and I know you will take it to him here." And I voted for Donald Trump 3 times, and I'm over it. You have my MAGA cousin, who is a character who didn't talk to me for a year because he was so down the rabbit hole. What finally broke him was the Epstein files. He just said, "We're protecting the worst of the worst in society." And then you have somebody like Joe Strada who says, "I'm with Donald Trump 100% of the time." So I guess that
Wow.
means the failed Iran war. That means continuing to cover up the Epstein files. Half of them still haven't been released. It's a number of things, but it's also bread and butter issues of how are you going to make my life easier? How are you going to fix these systems that they've broken? How are you going to help my mom and millions of others like her being tossed around in a broken healthcare system, or my brother who was phased out of his healthcare because it was too expensive because they took away the subsidies on purpose? I hope to have a substantive debate, and I've challenged him to 3 debates. I imagine he will continue to be no show Joe, and we will continue to point out that he's afraid to debate me.
I really never understand, like, the whole idea of not debating someone is, like, the idea is, like, "Oh, I'm not gonna want to, like." I think it shows that there's a fear that one would lose a debate on the ideas, which are what a debate does, rather than, like, rhetoric that is on a campaign trail. You have to actually debate ideas during a debate, and if you're not willing to do that, you know you're gonna lose. And I think that that's just that's a very I think that there's a lot of people, and especially in states like Florida, Texas, and other states that, like, are presumed to be like, "Oh, this is Florida, like, it's not gonna go to a Democrat,"
Right.
specifically in like yours, and I think that and maybe they're right. We'll find out in November. But like, I think there's a little bit of this is a different election. I think that they think they can just do politics as usual for Florida and like just kind of say I have an R by my name and
Right.
that's what wins me. Um, and I don't think that's going to work anymore because I think that what we've seen with just like obviously in the GOP primaries and obviously now in Democrat primaries for good or for bad, we see a just rejection of the two political parties as we currently know them. Some of that's good, some that's bad, but all I understand why it's happening, not liking where it's going, but that's where they are. I don't think that people are voting for Republican just because they're Republican or Democrat just because they're Democrat. I think that people are voting for people and they're voting for like change.
Yeah.
And that change could be like on like singular issues like healthcare. It could be a cultural issue. Like I would say Epstein files are more than just a cultural issue, but they're not an economic. They're not like they don't fit into one of the cleaner bubbles of like the top policy issues. They fit more into the culture, but like it's also judicial and like legal issues also. Um,
Corruption.
corruption,
Absolutely.
corruption, corruption has become its own thing. It normally isn't a thing that people vote on as like a top issue. Um, but I think that it's so obvious by this administration, and then the enablers like the people in office and the people that are running to support them, like Joe Strata. Um, but I was wondering, you mentioned earlier that like the Democratic Party is starting to lose its way in the elements. What exactly do you mean by that? And like, because obviously, I'm sure you will be attacked as communist, socialist, every other ist there is. Um, and I think that they're going to try to see if that sticks more this time than in past elections, given there have been candidates in little pockets of the country that do ascribe to those types of views proudly that have won significant primaries in the country in notable areas of the country. So, how would you respond to those attacks? And also, like, how do you think the Democratic Party has lost its way?
I mean, they've already started with those weak attacks. They called me socialist, whatever. That the other day. I'm a red-blooded capitalist who believes in our system that clearly needs reform. But I worked, from Senator Bob Graham. I was the youngest appointee in the Clinton administration at 20 years old, which was an amazing experience. And I think we need to get back to Democrats that actually believe in fiscal responsibility and balancing budgets. Trump has added, half of our national debt in 6 years. We're at $40 trillion, and that is unsustainable. And both parties are to blame. They've certainly lost their way on that. It's whoever gets the ball, then it's their turn to run up the numbers. People expect better in their own lives, of course. They can't live that way. And certainly the government shouldn't act like people's taxpayer funds are their own personal piggy bank. How the party's lost its way, I think it's pretty obvious. I mean, just look at the last few elections. Look at Florida. I worked on the Clinton campaign in '96, and since Obama, it hasn't been competitive because we've missed the plot every time. We've jumped in and followed the Republican lead on these divisive 80-20 issues, and being so afraid to offend anybody in our broad coalition that they take the losing path every single time. And I got to tell you, in a primary, it was really tough saying things like that because of who votes in a primary.
That that that
I wanted to be true to myself, and I also wanted to say, look, that's great. You can go win the nomination and go far, far left on everything and get smoked in the general because it's not where Florida voters are.
that's the issue. I feel like is really hard. Is like to win races like this, or to win because like this. I just looked it up. This was a district that obviously the right now retiring incumbent Daniel Webster won by about 20 points in 2024. I think that's a race that's very winnable in a year like this because that's not like an insurmountable margin. And that was also with an incumbent who was, I would say, more establishment
Of course,
conservative.
the name
Um,
the old Eddie Murphy movie, the name you just check the
yeah,
box.
and it's like he had been there for a while. I remember correctly, Webster was actually there was almost a primary challenge, successful primary challenge several cycles ago from Laura Loomer,
Yeah,
which imagine what that could have been like having that as a member of Congress. But the point is that like he was he was challenged from the ultra far right and won. So he was certainly not like this. He was certainly pretty conservative and certainly Trump adjacent, but he wasn't seen as that. And so he won by 20 points in 2024 when there was obviously a big Republican year. So that's definitely a winnable district. But I think that one of the big issues is like you need a more, at least you don't necessarily need a centrist candidate in all these races. That's beneficial in some ways, but also like at least like someone that can appeal to like large, and that can be like there's people that are progressives that can do that, but the far left can't do that.
I agree.
They just can't. The thing is, there is so much focus on purity politics. Like, if you don't agree with me on this issue,
Amen, brother. Amen.
but the thing
And
is,
our values oftentimes are the same. It's
yeah,
how you present and how you make the argument
it's
to voters and meet them where they are and
like
not put your finger in their face.
like like I don't like. So I think that, but the problem is that you have to make it through the primary first to get to that point where you can be competitive in a general. And I say this often. I think that there is an element of the further left, not of all of them, but among a large segment that are in the primary electorate that do have somewhat of an allergy to the idea of winning.
Yeah,
Um, like
I agree.
like if you don't, not only if you don't believe in this policy, but if you don't believe in it and communicate it using the exact words in our party platform, using this exact wording, using this exact terminology, using this exact same train of thought, you are MAGA. It's like, no, no. The thing, like, I've seen this issue play across a lot of different issues, most notably, of course, with foreign policy. Um, and I wanted to get to that because obviously, like, this is a major issue. You mentioned the Iran war. This is obviously a thing that matters a lot on very different grounds. Um, I do think that most voters care a lot more about the Iran war than they do about foreign policy in general because they care about the Iran war because it's affecting us at home in a way that the other Middle Eastern conflicts are not affecting us as much in terms of the daily gas price increases and other problems that this has caused. So I was wondering what your take is on like the various foreign policy issues that you're um going to have to deal with if you win November.
I think if you put into Claude or ChatGPT or what would be the worst possible foreign policy you could come up with, I think it would look a lot like what we have. We've offended our allies.
Yeah,
We have made the world less safe. We have put our troops in harm's way and in unending deployments, which is wrong. And somehow that when families question that, then they're being disloyal to the cause when their loved ones are the ones in the middle of all this. It is an incoherent, dangerous foreign policy, and it's only focused on enriching Trump, his cronies, and the billionaire class, and Joe Strada. I assume you have to ask yourself why would a billionaire or almost billionaire wanna leave his yacht and his lovely life to, in his words, to go to Washington to be a freshman member of Congress. I can tell you, it is an extremely difficult uh, job that if you're not there for the right reasons, I can't imagine anybody wanting to do it because it's miserable.
yeah, I think that it's a very hard thing to do to run for office, and then of course then to serve because it's in a lot of ways a thankless job. And like the thing is, like you have to kind of do a lot of, frankly, like public willingness to like humiliate yourself or someone else to get clicks in the media.
Had to do the
Um,
hula the other night, brother. That was that was interesting. And I've never done the hula before, but I was in the villages with a great crowd, and I was doing the hula, so that was a first for me. But
yeah,
no, I mean when I say I think it's an incredible job too. To be
yes,
clear, I think we're it's a sacred trust.
no, it has
You
to be done,
the
and it's
ability to represent the people that are, and I just think we've lost sight of that. So when somebody like Joe Strada comes on the scene, it offends me, and it should offend every voter because he thinks he can buy his way to more corruption and leading this country to unsustainable debt and a country that isn't the country I grew up in for my kids, their kids, and their kids. And we are better than this on the foreign policy front. Uh, we are certainly better than what we're sending out to the world. That is another reason I'm doing this. I'm married to an immigrant myself, and I take it deeply personally when we attack immigrants for everything in this country. We're a country of immigrants. We're also a country of laws. So you'll never hear me defend, the policies of the previous administration in many ways. But Trump had the ability to pass comprehensive government or immigration reform, and he refused to do so because he wanted to use it as a political cudgel and to beat up on people that he doesn't like. And I think we saw a breaking point in Minnesota, but sadly, I think we're going to see more, not less, after this election. And we need to have a House and a Senate that has the ability and tools of a co-equal branch of government with funding and oversight to fight back.
So would you say would you, because I know there's a lot of talk about what to do with ICE if Democrats take back the House and Senate. Maybe not in 2026 because Trump will still be the president, unfortunately, but certainly in the future. Would you be open to the idea of abolishing and then replacing ICE with a new body that is more accountable to the people, and but also, yes, goes after the actual hardened criminals without doing what has done in the last that 2 years now? Or do you have a different approach?
I think it's a mistake and a trap to say we want to abolish ICE first as a starting point. I know that doesn't make a lot of Democratic voters happy, but I think what we're seeing, I mean, ICE, we've seen under Obama, he deported more people and did so using the law and people in windbreakers and not military gear, throwing, elderly folks and this aging folks, I got to get that right. Sorry, aging folks in the streets and putting guns in people's faces and intimidating people and doing some of the most un-American things I've ever seen in my life. I mean, it's like honestly straight out of a history book, and we haven't learned anything. Uh, Absolutely needs to be ripped down to the studs. We need to have greater accountability. Every officer should have a body camera on. Everybody should lose the mask. Everybody should have a badge. Everybody should have a judicial warrant, an actual legal warrant. Pretty basic things. And through funding and through oversight, those things can be done. Uh, Whatever you call it. But I said in the beginning, I think just coming out and saying I want to do that would be a mistake because it's not, I think, necessarily where a lot of voters, especially in this district, are, even if the end result is the same. They clearly need to be ripped down to the studs.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I think again, this is another example of what I was saying earlier about how, like, if you don't phrase things the way that people, the thing is, 'cause I feel like at the end of the day, what you said and what the ideas being proposed, like, I feel like the term "abolish ICE" is like not actually a the terminology that it doesn't mean what I think that a lot of people mean when they say it. Like, I think what a lot of people when they think "abolish ICE," they think what you just said, which is like ripping down to the studs, as you said. But when people hear "abolish," they think get rid of, but not necessarily
Right.
replace. Like, and not like they don't think of it like they think of it's gone and like this immigration enforcement is done, and that's not in line with most voters. Um, Nor should it be. But I think that I was also wondering. You mentioned that was like a big reason why you got into this race is healthcare. What exactly is your approach to like fixing the healthcare system?
Can I just go back to that for a second, just
Sure.
because I saw a comment pop up and I agree. I mean, the fact that we're locking people away with no accountability and where people are being raped, where people are being separated from their families, children are being thrown in cages again, uh, that cannot stand. And I can't imagine anybody that can defend that, even though Republicans want to pound their chest and say 100% with Trump. That is wrong. That is not who we are as Americans. And on day one, I would be one of the loudest voices with Maxwell Frost and so many others who, he's led the charge. He helped close Alligator Alcatraz. That guy is a juggernaut. He is a superstar
Love
and
him.
he's amazing and think the world of him and his team. Uh, it's really speaking with one voice and getting Democrats to stop being so selfish, where it's about their brand. Like I said, having a unified message on things like this, where it's not this person going here or doing, whatever gimmick they need to do for social media, having serious people address serious issues on behalf of the American people, and that being one of them. Certainly, go ahead. You got a question?
Yeah, I was wondering, so you mentioned that you got into healthcare, like, you got into this because of healthcare. What exactly is your approach to, like, fixing the healthcare problems that we are, like, and that because I think that that's, like, another thing where people are very, like, unsure about exactly how to traverse that, thing. We all agree that we need to do some sort of major changes to the system, as you acknowledged when you, talked about why you entered this race, but a lot of people are divided on exactly what that process looks like, whether it's like expanding Medicaid to states, whether it be um, covering for dental, vision, and hearing, or Medicare for all, whatever it might be. There's so many different options. Um, what is your approach that you're talking about in the campaign trail?
I mean, certainly starting both based on the constituency, based on why I got in. I mean, one of the main driving forces, and we launched on the doorstep of the villages because, and I said it on Wesh, and I say it everywhere I go, they're coming for your Social Security and Medicare, and people need to be prepared and they need to be ready to fight. And winning a seat like this, especially with the villages, and we're hoping to use platforms like this and other national audiences to say, they're actively working on this now. And what are we going to do about it? For the first year of the Trump administration, the Democrats were nowhere to be seen. They were surprised, even though it was all laid out in Project 2025. It took them a year to find their footing. And I think we need to be prepared now. You've heard Speaker Johnson, Trump, Rick Scott, certainly. Again, they'll put everything under waste, fraud, and abuse, but that's just code for they are cutting. And they've already said they're going to raise prescription drug prices and Medicare Part D. So drawing a big circle around that this is not a bargaining chip, that is my starting point. Also, augmenting and restoring the Affordable Care Act and the cuts that were made to Medicaid for sure. Um, here's another purity test. Now the buzzword is Medicare for all. I think a public option is a more sensible way to go. Not only just for this country and where people are. People aren't necessarily wanting to be on a socialized medical program. They want choice. And my wife being from Sweden, I've seen what that looks like. It works in many, many ways, and it certainly would bring a lot of people up, and those people deserve coverage. Nobody should go broke over medical debt, even though that's a leading cause. But you still need private insurance in Sweden, and they are a highly socialized country where you're paying, 50 or 60% in tax. So it's not an apples to apples comparison as many people on that subject. That if you aren't on that level of purity, I just think there need to be a little bit digger deeping on all of these issues.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that, like, I personally have my own views on it. Like, I personally support Medicare for all, but, like, I also am of the view, like, well, all whether you are whatever candidate race you're running,
Everybody deserves health care. It is a
everyone,
right.
well, all on that same page that we need to make major changes to the system. We all have different approaches, but at the same time, we all agree on the base level
Right.
that we need to reform the healthcare system in major ways and make transformational change on that. The question is, do we go the full way? Do we go to this full route that some people are saying? Do we go to this other route that other people like? And I think that that's a reasonable debate. I don't think that it's it helps anyone to attack each other when the GOP is pretty united that
That's exactly
well,
right. They
there
know
was a
where they're going.
the last night, the last few days, the Senate candidate in South Carolina, Lindsey Graham's sister,
Good Lord.
was like talking about healthcare, and she's like, "My mom and dad never took a sick day in their life," and then she goes on to say that her father died when they were 11 years old. I'm like, so the solution to healthcare is dying, and like I don't think that like I feel absolutely awful that their parents died at a young age. That's awful. No one should have to go through losing a parent at that age or any age.
Right.
But when that's like your pitch for healthcare reform, or healthcare talk. Like that's your healthcare mind. It's like, well, just die. I don't think, and that's unfortunate.
That's their attitude, Eli. It's your problem. Everything, whether it's FEMA, whether it's healthcare,
That also the thing
deal with it.
that's
It's not
also
government.
that's also what happened in Iowa with the now retiring Senator Joni Ernst. She said something very similar like last year, and that got a lot of flack until people forgot about it. It's like this is a consistent pattern. They're just like um the thing is they don't want to get involved in people's lives until they do.
Exactly.
Um and the thing is like it's like they're like we're not going to tell you what type of um we're not going to help you with healthcare, but we're going to tell you what books you can read. It's like that sounds like a Florida localized thing. It's across the
It's
country, but
national too, but I'm glad
I
to
would say
see Angie
Florida
Gallo
certainly
and some
is.
others push back and take out some of these ridiculous human beings that are
I'm like, we
never read a book and are trying to ban books for, not that there's this thing called the internet, I wonder, but it's just
yeah,
common sense, cultural
it's so
wars.
silly. It's like I take joy in the fact that I know that last when the Florida primaries happened a few weeks ago, that one of the major school boards um flipped the majority from the Moms for Liberty people and kicked off the
Angie
last.
Gallo, big, yep.
That was I think people don't know about that, but I think that type of stuff needs to know that that's even happening in places like Florida. Moms for Liberty has been losing a lot of seats in recent years all across the country, in red areas, in blue areas, in purple areas, all over the place. Because at the end of the day, um people who want like things to actually get done, especially regarding education. They want to actually see progress made rather than people focusing on like a singular issue of like instead of people focusing on like, oh, can our children read? We're choosing to focus on what are they reading, and I think that that's the wrong thing to focus on. Of course, we have a Florida has a gubernatorial candidate who did a press conference a few months ago on literacy and all these other things. And then he right behind him he had a banner that misspelled achievability. So the amount of people that had to approve that, as someone who was on the campaign, I'm sure you know, that that's a lot of people not knowing how to spell achievability for that to be approved for a major campaign event for a major statewide race. That if that's not a sign that they had the wrong priorities regarding education, I don't know what is.
Eli,
Um,
this guy is gonna dump millions of dollars on us to lie about us, to run the same bullshit attack ads that everybody's tired of. Sorry, I think you can say that on a webcast. I hope so. Uh, I don't care, man. I don't care. It's not about me. It's never been about me. It's not about a prize. It's about standing up to what we're seeing in this country and saying enough is enough. And I hear you're a political junkie, and the old saying, "How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time." You get people on the front lines, people like Angie Gallo, people like Maxwell Frost, people I hope like myself who can join the fight and push back on this idiocy that we're seeing in this country. It is shameful. And to talk to anybody outside the United States, not almost, they cannot believe the state of affairs in this country. And we are the United States of America. I love this country as much as anyone. No one's going to steal my flag from me. And I just think people have had enough of this, and people have seen that. And you look at the polling, 70+% say Donald Trump is not focused on issues that matter to them. And I think the contrast could not be more clear in this case, where you have a chooch like Joe Strada saying he's with him 100% of the time and offers absolutely nothing beyond attack ads. So bring it, brother.
I think that a lot of people and I can't speak to but maybe you can say more like about why you think you were able to do something that other people struggle to do in Democratic primaries, which is like speak your mind and run as more like this is as a person who can actually win a general election, and then win in a primary when that's harder to do, as we acknowledge. But like I feel like part of it's because a lot of people, whatever ideology they're looking for someone who's willing to like fight back and like punch back after they keep pummeling us with punch after punch with like, oh, we're the party of faith and freedom, we're the
Right.
party of patriotism, we're the party of America. Well, we are um doing none of showing none of those character traits through our elected representatives on the GOP side. Uh and so it's like I think people are looking for someone who's willing to fight, even if that person might not be the same ideology as they might want. Is that why you think you're able to be successful in a primary like this, or is it something else?
I listen. Well, you're hired. I appreciate that. That's good. No, I think people want somebody who is authentic, who's going to tell the truth. I had people say that I was parachuted in by the DNC, and I said in my first meeting, I think those people are clowns and should all be replaced. I think people that won't take our call when we are on the front lines fighting for what this country's all about, and they're more concerned with their internal polling or whether they get a win on their scorecard, you've lost touch with why you should be there. We should be helping all people fighting these fights, and I'm one of them. And one of the ways we're going to win this is we're going to bring, whether they like it or not, national attention to this race. You've got Disney World, you've got Universal Studios, and you've got the villages. And all three of those things, there are issues that we can highlight in positive ways. Because I grew up on the parks and I love them. And the workers that work there are amazing. And even down to a granular level of, I've got a good friend who she's helping us on the campaign. She has a severe nut allergy, and that doesn't sound like much to most people, but this young lady can't go certain places or even go to events with me because if she shakes someone's hand, she'll have a shock that could kill her.
Wow.
But in Disney World, they've figured out a way that they can have a safe environment for her with food, so nothing is commingled. And it's just people that lead on issues like that should be rewarded and highlighted, and I intend to do that. And then certainly with the villages, fighting Trump on his territory, and giving a national platform. I think the Democrats have been absent on Social Security and Medicare, and absolutely ringing the bell as they should be that this is an attack that's coming. It's starting to percolate now, but they've just for 10 years, it's only been about we're so anti-Trump, and all we have to do now is be against Trump and we're going to win, offering no
Well,
solution. Yeah.
the thing is, I was deeply depressed, as I think many Americans were, when on election day 2024, when Trump was reelected for a second term. But one thing that I've thought about is while I wish it had not happened, but if I'm going to look at the only bright side I can see out of that is that I think it taught us a needed lesson that we needed before 2028 is that we need to be, if we couldn't beat Trump when he had 34 felonies,
Right.
what chance do we have if we don't change strategies? But when we have a new candidate, one way or the other, we don't know if it's going to be Vance, we don't know if it's going to be Rubio, we don't know if it's going to be Tucker Carlson, it could be any of these people. All we know is that it's going to be someone that's Trump aligned or nuts, or both. And so I think that if we couldn't beat someone like Trump in 2024 with all those issues, with abortion having just been overturned a few years before, with the felonies, with all these different factors, what chance do we have against if Rubio's the nominee, who gets coded at least as a moderate, even though he's not, but he gets coded that way because of his work in the Senate and his and I will say that's been tarnished by his work under the Trump administration, unfortunately. But the thing is, I don't think the Democratic Party of 2024 could beat a Marco Rubio of 2028. I don't. Thankfully, we have changed some things in terms of we're more willing to talk about like what we believe in. Um, but I was wondering, obviously, you've mentioned quite often that you have a lot of issues with the people in Washington on both sides of the aisle. So this is the question I ask. Obviously, it's probably not going to be a major interest to the voters of Florida's 11th, but it still is an issue that a lot of people care about. Is when you win in November, would you support a speaker, Hakeem Jeffries, or would you support someone else, or would you expect some concessions? Like, what I guess is your position on that range of different perspectives?
I can say I've known him for a number of years. He's a nice guy. I think he's in it for the right reasons, but I think this middle of the road nonsense needs to end. And I don't know what the hell he's doing meeting with Jared Kushner. I don't understand that at all. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Um, I know why Jared Kushner's doing it, but I think we need to fight. I think yes, we ought to make history, and I'm all for that. Um, but I think we should have other voices too, and nobody should be ordained anything. I think people need to earn it and explain how. It shouldn't just be about making history. It's about how do we make life easier for the people we're representing.
I would agree. I think that, like, when I heard about the Jared Kushner meeting, my first thought process was like, "What's going on here?" That I read a little bit more about it. It seems like it was like it's a common practice to meet with, like, someone's head liaison that's not directly involved in the White House, so, like, kind of so, like, they can start developing those communications because obviously Kushner and Trump believe that.
These people are trying to steal our country, man, and they're in the
Yeah,
process
I
of
don't
doing
think that the thing
so.
is
I
I
don't think there's a lot of room to make nice or even, as you said, and as they're consolidating media, as they're consolidating every platform, I think platforms like yours are even more important to reach people because they are shutting down and following the Hungarian model of an autocratic rule in this country. And it is not hyperbolic or overstating it. And people need to understand that. And I truly believe, and everyone says this election is the most important, and for the individuals running it, probably is, but our country is at stake. And if we do not win this election, we could be gone forever, sadly.
Yeah, and I think that, like, I understand, like, it's a typical thing for, like, when there's a president and then it's expected with the opposition party will be gaining at least the House and the Senate, like, what it looks like will happen this cycle with at least the House. Um, it's typical for the president to send his or her liaison or someone from the that's high up in negotiations to develop, a communication line between that and
Only
the
because they think we're gonna win.
yeah, so then
They ignored them, for
so
the whole
I
time.
I think that's a good sign in terms of our ability to win in November. And I understand the Hakeem Jeffries told them, like, "This we're not willing to concede on the various all these different points that we've laid out over the last 2 years, in the last 10 years, frankly." And his was like, "I don't," but he said, "I wanna establish communication because, like, they've refused to talk to us for the last 2 years. So I think that we need to establish some communication because obviously Hakeem Jeffries wasn't in leadership rung at all during the Trump 1.0. So he's like, he doesn't really have a relationship with Trump in the same sense of, like, that Pelosi obviously did.
I'd
Um,
say, "Hey, man, let's win first. Let's focus on winning
yeah,
these seats. Help the
I think
people
that
like
also
us instead of meeting with Jared
I think that
Kushner."
this is part of the problem with Hakeem Jeffries and other people in the Democratic Party is that they are doing things that might be seen normal as, like, in, like, old politics, but
Right.
we're not in the politics as usual,
We don't need strongly
realm.
worded letters from Chuck Schumer. We need people that are
Yeah,
gonna
the thing is, if
fight.
I s the thing is, like, Chuck Schumer's my senator. He's a decent senator, but his leadership style is hard to watch. I think that if I see it like, the thing is, I am of the view in terms of when candidates or members of Congress curse, I don't mind it if, like, that's what you like, if it's natural, but when I hear Chuck Schumer.
And that is such a great point, whether it's the beards that they all grow after we lose, whether it's they start yelling the F,
Yes.
just be authentic, man, and
Yeah, like, the
cut
thing is the
shit
thing the thing is, like the thing is,
off
like,
it. Just
if
yeah.
you wanna grow a beard, but, like, if you're like, "Oh, I wanna grow a beard so I appear manly," it's like, no, that's gonna make you the thing is not everyone
Cowboy hats on CNN. I mean, Jesus,
the
just
thing is
be
the
authentic.
thing is if you wear a cowboy hat in your normal life, go
Exactly.
ahead.
God bless.
If you curse in your normal life, go ahead, live your life. But when I hear Chuck Schumer say the F word, it's like, I know you don't say that. Like, I know at least I know you don't say that. Like, this is not comfortable for you.
Well,
You're
he
trying to
does actually, but not in that way. But anyway, yeah.
yeah. Like, it's not in the
It's
sense
it's so scripted and performative, and I just think people look the other way and say, "What are these clowns doing?"
and the thing is, it just honestly makes it look more pathetic, and I think that, like, my whole view is, like, I'm not sold on Hakeem Jeffries as a speaker, I'm not. I'm also not sold on but I'm also very unclear about who would I don't really.
Raskin's a voice in there. I know he's one of the smartest guys, and
No,
I
no,
think
he's
probably
incredibly
the
talented.
smartest guy in the caucus.
The
But
problem, the only thing, I think that he's probably going to run for Senate in 2028. That's my assumption. So I don't know if that would. Now, in theory,
we
I'd
should have
like to.
debate. We should have debate, and
Yes,
it should
the
be an
thing this
open
should be,
process, and nobody's entitled to anything,
and the
and
thing is,
everything has to be earned.
I think that what has been clear from the candidates I've talked to across the country, assuming the candidates win, there's a lot of people that are upset in terms of the people that will be winning election that aren't currently in Congress that are upset with how the leadership has handled the last 2 years, the last 4 years, the whole Trump time, frankly. But besides Pelosi's time, people were pretty happy with Pelosi being a speaker. But since then, it's been kind of more complaints on the House side. And the thing is, what I've heard is like we're gonna at least want some serious concessions on how we're gonna run the next 2 years to 4 years and into the future under a Speaker Keith Jeffries, if that's a choice we choose. He's gonna have to make some serious concessions on how he's going to run the House if he wants to be the Speaker. And I think that's a normal, fair process. If I had to guess, it would probably be him, just because
Yeah,
the thing is, 'cause I think a lot of people that even don't love him, they're like, he hasn't been given a chance to be speaker. It's hard to be a minority leader when you have no leverage. In the Senate, I feel like Chuck Schumer has less excuses because he has leverage as the filibuster and various other things. You don't have the leverage in the House when you don't have the majority. You don't have the majority. You can't do things like that but I think that there's other things he could be doing. But I was wondering, obviously, we've seen a lot of talk about Trump sending ICE to polling centers, sending the National Guard. And then, of course, the Supreme Court just ruled this week. I would say in a surprise ruling, it surprised me. And I'm usually not surprised by what the Supreme Court does when it's terrible. But even I was surprised that they ruled this way. Is they ruled that we'll see how much of it can actually get implemented before November. That's not a long time. That's not a short time. That's a long time. Not a lot of time for him to figure it out. But they did rule that he can try to restrict mail-in ballots, which of course in Florida is a larger swath of the voting public than other states because of
how he votes.
yeah, that's the hypocrisy and the corruption is just deeply problematic. Um um and so I think that that's my I was wondering like what is your campaign doing and what's like maybe the state party doing that I'm sure you've been in coordination with since your primary win, if anything, planning to do um to like fight
I'd
this,
like
be
I'd
prepared
like to
for it?
see from the state party. We could use their help and their resources. That's for sure.
But
I'm
haven't contacted you?
I haven't heard a thing.
You're a Democratic nominee for
Barely get people in DC to pick up the damn phone. So,
the
because
state party. They're like, that's I will say I have things I used to think very highly of the Florida State Democratic Party under its current leadership, but as I've been working on various campaigns and following a lot of these races, I've lost some confidence. I think that
I'm
this
holding out hope, so I don't want to burn any bridges. But we need help now.
yeah,
SOS. We need
this is like the thing is we have about 2 months.
less with
That's yeah,
mail-in ballots
yeah,
left. To answer
yeah.
your question, we're going to focus heavily on mail-in ballots in Orange County in particular, trying to get those numbers in and locked down and secured because we know they're going to screw around and they're going to do everything, and in every county for that matter. But we know they're going to do anything and everything to not have this be a fair process, to suppress the vote wherever they can, and to intimidate. And I just think for everybody in CD11, for all Floridians, for all Americans, just fight back and vote. It is our constitutional duty. It is our constitutional right. And it is the only way we can stop this corrupt administration. And we all have to do our part.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I was wondering, my last question before I let you go is, if you wanna get involved through donating, through volunteering, through whatever it might be, making calls, how is the best way to do that?
JamesPericola.com. And please, you've got a gazillion followers. If you can put up our social media, we were trying to grow ours. We're a brand new campaign. Some of these folks have been in for a year or more in some of these races. But no, it's voteJamesPericola.com on Instagram, James Pericola for Congress on Facebook, at James Pericola on X. It's certainly on our website, JamesPericola.com. You can sign up, you can donate, all the above, and we'd love to hear from you. Appreciate it. But I'll
Well,
keep
thank you for
as long as
joining.
you keep, whatever your timeline.
Yes, of course. Well, thank you for joining. It was
May
a
I
very
ask
good
you a question?
conversation. Of
May I ask you a question? Just not to
course.
you endorsed us without even meeting, and I appreciate it. And I was like, give me that dude's number. I want to call him because I'm so grateful. What convinced you to reach all of your followers on our race? And
I
thank you.
think that my focus is trying to spotlight candidates that are in, yes, tough races, but one that candidates that I think are strong candidates that can win in the general election. So obviously, I endorsed you in the primary. Um, um, and so I think that and I think so. I thought you were the best candidate in the primary to win in the general, so that's why I endorsed you. But I also think that, like, yes, this is a race that's been incredibly hard to win, but I think it's one of the districts that could be flipped in this seat if we actually invest and actually pay attention to the race. And that's why the type of race that I try to highlight. So that's why I um endorsed your campaign, both in the primary and in the general.
I'm grateful, and I hope we can do more of these. It's been fun, and I'm eager. We can do questions with folks in the future or whatever. I want to be as available as possible and be the exact opposite of No Show Joe, because the only way we're going to win this is as a grassroots campaign to get people involved, to get people to knock doors with us, to get people to give whatever they can give. I say this and it's true. I hate talking about myself. I get nervous in front of audiences like yours and others. And I really, really hate asking people for money, but it's what you have to do. And I just could not sit on the sidelines. It is not about me. I just think, and I know we can do better in this country, and I want to be a part of that movement. So
Well,
thank you.
thank you. Well, thank you for running. Thank you for joining, and good luck in your campaign.
Thanks. We'll see you soon. I appreciate it. Take care. I don't know how to end this here, bro.